My name is Juliana Nykolaiszyn, and with me is Tanya Fincham. We're with the Oklahoma State University Library. We're here in Lawton, Oklahoma today to interview Joe and Doris Renschen. It's March 9th, 2012, and we're here today to talk about their Centennial Farm. Thank you for joining us today.
You're welcome.
Well, let's begin by learning a little bit more about your family.
Well, I guess I married into the family. And my mother-in-law's folks kind of homesteaded this. Well, actually, he wasn't drawn. He and a friend had came from Illinois to try to get land down here. And he wasn't drawn in the drawing, but the friend was. And the guy that got it didn't really want to live here, but my husband's granddad did. So they made a deal that at that time, the one that drew it had to live on the land for a year, and then they could sell it or whatever. So the guy lived in a dugout right out here in the yard. You can probably still see it. I could still find where the dugout was. They filled it in with dirt. Of course, I think he filled it in years ago. But anyway, the guy lived in the dugout for a year, and then my husband's grandparents bought the farm. And we used to have pictures somewhere. At that time, the grass was so tall, you could see a man's hat, and he was on a horse, and that was how tall the grass was. You could not even see the man's face. You could see the top of his hat, and Grandma always said that was one of her first boyfriends that lived down the road. They were about 4 or 5 years old. And anyway, this little boy was on with his dad on the horse, but you couldn't see the little kid. But anyway, that's how I kind of got how I got involved with it, was married into the family.
And what was your husband's grandparents' names?
Aylman.
Okay.
Emma Aylman. She had 3 brothers and a sister, and the sister lived across the road. Her name was Helen, and Grandma's was Dorothy. And then one of the brothers Herman lived over here, and John used to live down east. The house is gone. And then Clarence, another brother, wandered on back to Illinois. That's where they had originally came from. But the grandma and the grandpa originally were from Germany. They were German, and they came from Germany and settled in Illinois, and then came on down here when the Oklahoma opened. And anyway, they after a year of living in a tent in the area here somewhere, Grandma couldn't remember just where, but it was on the premises somewhere here. They brought 3 train loads of things from Illinois, and one was a load of cattle, and one was vegetables and machinery, plows, what have you, and then household furniture. And most of the furniture is still here. And anyway, Grandma used to tell about them walking. She was a little bitty kid, and she'd get tangled up in the grass and stuff. Anyway, they drove the cattle. The train came to Duncan. There was a station at Duncan at that time. And the train stopped at Duncan, and they had to haul everything they had brought from down with them, had to haul it to the area. And so, but she told of her and her sister and her mama having to go and help. The boys were older, and these girls were the youngest. And how she was the baby. She'd by then was about 4 or 5 years old, how she'd get all tangled up in the big grass because she'd have to go, they all had to go help drive cattle from Duncan here. And how her dad would throw her up on a horse. You know, some of the guys would be riding horses, and how they'd take turns riding horses, and she got to ride on the horse most of the time because they had all that distance. That's not real long ways to Duncan, but it's a lot of ways. Anyway, they drove all their cattle here, and at that time, of course, there was no fences, and they were laying the land off. And we have the base line a mile up here. If you notice, if you came from that way, you notice you come to a dead end, you make a little jog, and then you have to go back. That's the base line. It goes clear across to Oklahoma. And they surveyed from one end of Oklahoma to the other. And when they met, that's how much. Now, this was back in 1900, early 1900s. You have something surveyed today, if you sell it, it'll have to be surveyed again, and they won't come out with the same survey. So they didn't do too bad a job surveying back early then, but that's what the baseline is from surveying Oklahoma from one end to the other, and they were off that much. But if you drive it, you can't get through the baseline clear across Oklahoma, but you can follow it by zigzagging, and we have followed it a long ways. You see.
I did a lot of driving in that area.
But you can, it does go clear across Oklahoma baseline.
Yeah, it had a lot of pastures, a lot of fences, and a lot of roads.
We run into a few fences. I mean, didn't run into the fence, but you'd come to a dead end and you'd think it was a road.
You do like this or like this. But I did a lot of driving back with
my
Dad's
husband
mom.
liked to check out things, and a lot of times that was our vacation. You know, weekend vacation was just to go driving and see what Oklahoma has
And
to offer.
he let me do all the driving. He kept an eye on my seizures, so in case I had a seizure driving. I love that area.
But anyway, that's why that's called baseline.
Mm-hmm.
And after they finally got the place in their name, then the man, his grandpa was
constable, judge.
well,
Justice
yeah,
of the
no, he
peace.
was shoot, I went blank.
Yeah, what they call it.
The paperwork
he was a
said
lawyer.
justice.
He
of
was
the
a
peace.
judge. Okay, he later became
Judge,
one of the
but
first judges in this area.
lawyer.
But when they first came, he was a
Lawyer or attorney?
in that area. Maybe I'll think of it. I can't. It's in that law, in that red book. But anyway, I can't think of what district attorney. No, shoot, I'm blank. But anyway, they built this house, and they made all the stones in the house, and they hauled the sand out of Cache Creek, which is 3 or 4 miles on south of here, or west of here, and made every stone in this house here on the ground, on area. And we used to have the mold. I've seen the mold. They had 2 molds and made every stone. And it would take 4 to 5 days, depending on the weather, for each block. If you'll see how big the blocks are. They're that thick right there. You can tell by that doorway. That's how thick the blocks are that the house is made of. And it took a good little while for them to dry. But each one has a pattern on it. It's not just like a cement block. If you look at them, you can see it's, well, they called it a feather. Grandpa always called it a feather design. But every block has a pattern on it. It's not just a cement block, you know. And so it took them about a year to make enough blocks to build this house. And I used to have a picture, but I've looked and I can't find it, of the big stacks of blocks that they would have lined up out here in the front yard. And those elm trees, there was 4, used to be 4 of them. they were little, maybe 4 foot tall, and these blocks would be some, big stacks of blocks that were much taller. So those trees have been out there a long time. 2 of them are still there, but 2 of them died years ago after a storm had hit them and what have you. But those are old trees and they look old.
In the original house, how many rooms?
Do what?
In the original house, how many rooms?
It has 3 bedrooms and an area room upstairs and 2 bedrooms downstairs and front room. Well, they called it the parlor, and they use that for dining room, and then the kitchen.
Pretty big house for that time.
Yeah, it was a big house. Yeah, and then they had a porch all the way around from the front. Well, not all the way, but all across the front and here on the west side. But the house was not modern, and there was a window here, and if you look in there, you'll see where we made a gun cabinet out of the window that looked out on the porch right here on this west wall. We made a gun cabinet out of that because it looks right into the bathtub.
Oh, the bathroom area.
This was the end of this one outside, just like that little porch. This was a little porch here, and it went outside. It was not a room. There was a door here that went into the washroom. That was not a door there. That was a solid wall there because you went outside. But when we had to make it a little more modern, we built a room on down, made a utility and a bath down there, and then made this into a usable bathroom. And that was always called the men's bathroom because there's just a lavatory and commode in there, and they could come in from the field or whatever and wash up before they come in, to eat. And then that one down there used to have tub and everything, but after my husband got sick, we had the tub taken out and the handicap shower, but hadn't made it handicap accessible.
I did mine the same way too.
And anyway, but we had to close up windows. But when Grandma was there, bless her heart, she was the sweetest lady. She's been here all of her life. She came when she was 3 years old, because there's a year, and then they moved their stuff here when she was 4. That was when they did all the pacing back and forth. But she'd been here all of her life, and when we had to close this window up, and we had to do something with that one in there because it looked right out into the shower or tub, and it just really upset her. So even after we closed them up one weekend, when she'd gone to her daughter's that lives in Lawton, the guy come out and helped get them closed up over that weekend. And when she came back then Sunday night, she was so upset because she couldn't look out on the porch. Well, the porch was not there no more. It was the bathroom. So I hung a curtain back up there. I hung a curtain back in front of the gun cabinet. So, and as long as she was here, she never raised the curtain, never checked it out. She was perfectly happy because her windows were back there. But she was 80 years old, too. And I can see how important that was. And I'm really kind of proud that I put up with that and did what government wanted, because I'm 80 years old. And, it's kind of hard to make changes. So, but this is the only home she knew. And so I went along with her. Whatever made Grandma comfortable, we did.
How was the early house heated?
Was what?
How was it heated before you modernized it?
Fireplace. Well, wood burning stove.
It had wood stoves, and that chimney goes all the way upstairs, and it also had wood stoves upstairs. We never put one up there. The Arkla gas line goes through here, and Grandma and Grandpa got tied on to the Arkla gas several years before I got in the family.
Back in the late 20s, early 30s?
30s, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so they've been on natural. The house is on natural gas. We do still use wood stove some. I don't much anymore because I have to do all the maintenance, and
The wood.
he has to bring me the wood, and he has a fireplace. So, but I haven't even had him bring any wood. I've burned up everything last winter, and he hadn't brought. But it hadn't been a bad winter either. So, but anyway, the lighting. See, this house was not. That's the reason the plugs are in the floor and wherever. They couldn't get.
Right.
When we had electric put in it, they couldn't get plugs just anywhere because of the stones, the way.
Too thick.
So they had most of the plugs come up out of the floor.
Yeah.
They had to go under the house, and also with the heating and water for upstairs. See, there was no water. We made a bathroom upstairs too.
Mm-hmm.
But everything had to be brought under the house and up through the one closet that the house. People used to didn't have closets, and they sure didn't have a room for each kid. So, but everything had to be under the house, the main part of the house. Now the heating system, cooling system. No, the heater is down here. The cooler air conditioner's out there. That was their wine cellar. They made wine. And that has a double door that used to have a double screen door out there where they brought in and out their barrels of wine. And there used to be old wooden barrels around, but they since have rotted and what have you. But this is, 80 years ago, so it's 90 years ago, so it's a long time ago. Anyway, I'd find little pieces in a lot of my junk out here. A lot of people think it's junk, but I like antiques. And every time I'd find a little bottle that, used to be, that table's full of junk.
They were probably very popular during Prohibition.
Yeah. Well, and he was. I wish I could think of what it'll show up. I can't remember what. Anyway, I was surprised that he would make wine, having the position that he had, because now when Oklahoma was dry, for so long, and it was really kind of against the law to have done something. I mean, maybe the grass was tall enough he felt safe. I don't know. But anyway, the basement, what they call the basement, it was not finished. Joe did run some cement on the floor and did some work. It still needs, after all these years, I still would like to have a little more work done down there. But it's the same size as the kitchen. When they built the kitchen, they dug that out and then made the kitchen. And it's, what kind of rock is it? Limestone or?
Sandstone.
I mean, that's the reason this house has very few cracks. It has sat here all these years.
But that makes a lot of water leaks, so
well,
when it rains especially.
The cellar, the basement, and I don't use it for a cellar. I had him build me a cellar because the floor of the kitchen floor is the top of the basement.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I had a hot tub down there and used it, for that purpose. But then, since then, I've given him a hot tub, and I can't go up and down steps anymore. I had a heart attack, and I'm not supposed to go up and down stairs. So, anyhow, that was their wine cellar down below here, this area. But the lighting in here, and I still have some of the lights hanging in the garage out there, was gas. They had gas pipe run across the ceiling, up, and across the ceiling, and a mantle like on a Coleman lantern, or that was the kind of lights they had. And now we took some of them down 30 years ago. They had electric Now, all the rooms don't even have ceiling lights. The two big front rooms in there, front bedroom and the other front room, doesn't even have ceiling lights. We have to run it up from. They could get plugs down below, but they couldn't figure out how to get electricity without wires showing, being dangerous. And the electrician that we had do it was certified. I mean, he wired stuff out of Fort Sill, so I knew he would do it right. But he said he could not. Of course, there again, that was been a little over 30 years ago that we had tried to get electricity in here for Henry's folks, and they did the best they could getting it in, but because of the walls are so thick that they couldn't put it just everywhere you wanted it. So we did get ceiling lights in there and fans in that one bedroom and that room, but of course this one wasn't a problem. It's wood, but they couldn't figure out how to get it into those other two rooms without. We got plugs in the floor, but that's it.
What year did you get electricity in this house?
What
year did electricity come to the house?
When you turned 40 and I was
It
born?
was, no, it was in the. Now they got it. Let's see. I'm from west of town, over by Faxon, over in there. And east of Lawton got electricity. You remember, when did electricity come over here? East of Lawton got it before west. I was over wested, and we didn't get electricity over there till late 40s. I think that east of town, they got it around early 40s. But I know they had telephone the same way. They had telephone and electricity on east of town before we had it over west town, because we had dairy and we didn't have electricity.
One more thing about the house. The upstairs used to be a boarding house?
No, not a boarding house. The boys slept up there. See, Grandma had her and her sister, and then there was 3 brothers. There's 5 children lived here.
Oh.
And as they married off. Now, Grandma was a teacher. His grandma was a teacher and taught at this little school just a half mile down the road here.
The upstairs was just for the boys.
Yeah. And they also boarded a teacher that taught up at Allendale. That's just, 2 miles up the road here. See, the schools used to be about every 2 or 3 miles because kids had to walk. Well, I walked to school. And if I had not cut through the guy's pasture, it would have been 2.5 miles for me to go walk around the road to school. But Dad wouldn't allow us to walk. We had to crawl under the fence in front of the house and head across the.
And one time you got muddy going
Yeah,
to
it
school
would,
too.
sometimes when he had plowed, the guy had his wheat plowed up. They're getting wheat up. You went to school and you had mud clear to your knees when you got there because you bogged across the old muddy field all the way. But anyway, but I think it was in the early 40s they got electricity here. But it was the later 40s before it was available. But some little, those pipes hanging up in the garage out here, that's what those lights are. Kind of has a little globe.
Yeah.
On the bottom, and it had like a Coleman lantern. You put what do you call those little deals that you put on there? And it put out a light about like a Coleman lantern. But they had one of them in each room. And that was their light, yeah. And Grandma always had now their heat, of course, we've got central now, but they did not have. And we haven't always had. But, they had that old big heater like you used to see on these Western shows, the little grocery stores. That's the kind of heat you remember that big old, it's a big old heater, and then they had one in here. But they also milked, and once they got electricity, Grandpa put a motor on the separator. Do you remember it being sitting over here? And they had an electric separator. They're so proud of that. They didn't have to turn it, anymore. And it sat there for years. They'd go out and milk and bring it in and pour it through a strainer, and somebody had to stand there and turn it. When I first got in the family, I'd helped do that some. But then Henry's dad figured out some way to he put a little electric motor on it. It looked like one of these air conditioner motors. Put it on there, and it was electric then, and you just plugged it in, and it would turn it. You didn't have to stand there and turn it.
Could you tell me about early crops? What was being grown on the farm and early crops? What was being grown in the early days?
Well, wheat mainly, and always feed for the cattle. Millet was, they don't raise millet anymore, but that was one of the feeds, mainly because chickens and turkeys it put on a nice head, and Grandpa would go out to the field, and his old knife is still out here. And he'd go out in the field and chop off. No, go in the other room. He'd go out and chop off the stalks and bring up here and throw in the chicken yard and let the chickens. That was how they fed them, And then, of course, they used them for cow feed. Mm-hmm. But wheat has always been oats.
Raised cotton across the road. Yeah,
this across the road was.
They hung up.
It was to cotton, and that's one reason that the farm is not, in my opinion, is not as good, because cotton land, if you don't keep it drugged down, it blows so bad, and all of that blew over here, and it makes the difference, And there's been many a time we had, but cotton, it's a lot of work. I'm not fond of cotton. When I was a kid, I had to chop cotton, and I had to pick cotton, and I ain't fond of cotton.
That's not easy work.
We got out of school to pick cotton, and we got out of school to pick cotton. But a lot of the kids, folks were hired hands. I mean, the men worked for, other farmers, and those kids didn't have, they just out of school. And it used to make my sis and I so mad, because we'd have to be out there that whole 2 weeks of picking cotton when all the rest of the kids were just horsing around. So I'm not real fond of cotton. It's a lot of work. And it's, in my opinion, I know we had to miss church a lot. I say a lot, often at certain times of the year, because my husband have to go out and drag the hair across, because of this. If the land is sandy at all, it blows like crazy. And with the Oklahoma wind, you know what kind of wind we have. So it seemed like every Sunday the wind blew, about the time cotton was trying to come up, and it'll cut it off. If you don't, it don't take much of that blowing to cut off your cotton, and then you lose your crop. So.
You had you mentioned milk cows. Milk cows.
Cows?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we always milked cows until the last few years.
Did you have chickens or any other type of?
Chickens, yeah.
Pigs or?
Peacock.
Peacock.
We had raised ostrich and emus until.
I helped her with that.
Till I got puny. When the worker can't work, well, everything went kaput.
Until I went to work, so I stopped it too.
Yeah, she liked the emus, the ostrich. We didn't have any problem with them, but they could be ornery.
Well, they built this beautiful house. What other structures came up they built on the property?
Okay, when they first moved, while they were waiting to build the house, and while they were in a tent somewhere out here, they built a barn, 2-story barn, and a storm blew it away several years ago, and that really hurt. That was the neatest barn. It had, they'd use these kind of rocks and set it up, up 2 or 3 rows high off of the ground, and then built this 2-story barn on it. And Grandpa had a pulley up there and a rope, and that's how he'd pull hay up and down, up into the loft, they called it. But they lived up there. After they got the barn built, they got to move out of the tent and into the upstairs of the barn. And then they finished the barn down below. Well, they had the structure up, of course, but then they made granaries and stuff down below. And then they built a chicken house right out here. And they moved out of the barn loft because it was hard for the kids to climb up and down the barn, and moved into the chicken house. They were about through with the house by then. And so they moved into the chicken house and stayed in that until they could move into the house. But then it was hot in the summer, so they used that chicken house. It left their kitchen out there and cooked out there that summer while they were... That door went outside originally, and the chicken house sat right back here. And so they'd go out there and cook. Grandma used to tell about running back and forth. I get so tired those boys wouldn't help do nothing, Anyway, the mama would cook out in what turned out then to be the chicken house, and the back house sat just right east of it. That was their bathroom. And, of course, they didn't have... I've got an old wash tub out there, bathtub on those big... In fact, I've got 2 of them. One of them we used... I used to bathe my kids. Had a rinse tubs up on a stand. And, 2 rinse tubs. And I put a kid in each side. but I had 5 children in about 6.5 years, so... it was a hurry-up thing because you had to hurry up and get done doing that so you could go help milk or something. So anyway, but that's how they built the barn first. Then they built a chicken house while the house was being built, and then they moved into the house. And then they added this room on after they got the house all finished. They saw that was a big house maybe, but didn't accommodate all their needs, so they built this on then to make a kitchen and moved it out of the chicken house and they had chickens. They had them in the barn in one of the granaries all that time, but they let the chickens have their own house then. And kids used to play out in the chicken house. I don't know if you remember playing out there.
No.
Ray kids did. They was city cousins, and they loved to go out in the chicken house and the back house, but they had bathroom and such at home, so it was a novelty for them. But it's quite interesting what went on. And no the Republic, but that wasn't what he was. I'm just going to blank on that.
Justice of the peace.
Anyway, the house got finished in 3 and went on the tax roll. Been on there ever since, I guess. Still is. And in there, it tells, I think that's the book. I didn't even look through it to see if that's the book that tells it. But his grandpa calls it wolf hunting with President Roosevelt down, well, it's Cookie Town now, between here and Wichita Falls, a little town down there. But it tells how he went wolf hunting. I imagine it was cows, might have been wolves, I don't know. But they call it wolf hunting with President. And also about marriages that he performed in what they call the parlor, that room on Feathers there. And those elm trees, there was 4 of them, and we used to have, I've seen a picture of a carriage, real pretty carriage that you see, like on Bonanza or something, pull up, sitting out in front there, and he performed weddings in the parlor, they called it. So it's, you know, he was one of the early businessmen or whatever. And this house, I'm sure you're familiar with or have seen Mattie Bill house in Lawton.
We've heard about it.
This house is older than it. Maybe not quite as, it's not known as well because Mattie Bill was a real flusy gal. And her house is, I've been through it many times, weddings and different. It is just open to the public, you know, certain hours. It has been for years. But it was more of a party house. It was not a working house. And so it's got a ballroom upstairs, you know, a big area. Of course, this could have a ballroom. There's a lot of room up there. But this definitely was a family structure, you know. But anyway, this house is older than Mattie Bill's house there in Lawton that gets quite a bit of advertisement.
Now, was your husband solely a farmer, or did he have a job outside of the farm?
Farmer. Now, my husband was a carpenter, too. Mm-hmm. And, like, he farms and has backhoe service. You can't make a living farming. But my husband loved farming. And if he had time, I think he would like it more. But when you work at backhoeing all day and then at 9, 10 o'clock somebody calls you and tells you they have a cow that's trying to calve you got to get out of bed and come out and help. That kind of disrupts your day. But anyway, thank goodness I can call on him for that. But no, the people, well, like I said now, his grandpa was some kind of, I call him politician now, just exactly what, and I can't remember for sure, but he did farm. Mm-hmm. He was a farmer, and he built ponds. He had a what they call it, a Fresno slip, something like that. This pond right west of the house here. Now Joe has dug it out. It went dry, of course, several years, about 3 or 4 years ago. The dam broke and it went dry, and he's cleaned it out and made it a good pond. But Grandpa had built it with a slip. They call it a Fresno or slip or something. But his granddad did help farmers build ponds around. And back then, from what I understood, farmers helped each other a whole lot. You know, they had thrashing machines that's how they didn't have combines. And one neighbor they'd all congregate and thrash for this guy, and then when they got his, then they all moved, and it was up to the women then would feed cook the meal wherever the guys were. The farmers everybody used to help each other with whatever, and it'd be good if they could do that now. I think the world would be in a better shape, but at any rate, that's kind of the way it goes. So,
how did you meet your husband?
Church. Well, not actually at church. I mean, had known him for a long time. We both families went to the same church, and both families lived on the farm, and my dad was acquainted with the Renschen family years before. I mean, the families kind of knew each other. And I went to St. Mary's Catholic School, and so did Henry, my husband. But I never really knew him in school. Well, he wasn't but 3 years older than me, but he was more intelligent, and he graduated from high school when he was 16. Well, I didn't. I got rheumatic fever and had to miss a year, my 9th grade, and so I didn't graduate until I was almost 18. So high school years was a mess for me because I was sick a lot. But anyway, he used to, when we had a dairy when I was growing up, and he used to come out with my stepmother's brother to the farm, I guess. I didn't know that he had as often as he said he had. And he knew me a long time before I knew him. It's kind of the way it turned out. And then after I got out, or got in high school, or got feeling better where I felt like getting around, after church sometimes, a bunch would get together and go to a movie or something on Sunday, or go skating. That was about all there was to do. And so that was kind of the way I really met him, I guess. But my dad knew the family, I guess, forever.
When you got married, did you move to the farm right away?
Yeah. Sorry to say.
Wow. You don't sound too thrilled.
Oh, cripple. Yeah, from a modern home and one that the studs were showing. But I'd do the same stupid thing over, I guess, probably, so I can't complain.
At that time, when you moved to the farm, was he the owner of the farm yet?
No, we rented the farm just 3 miles over here, and we lived there for several years. Well, Lois was a baby, so I guess we've had Sue, Linda. We lost our first baby, and then with Sue, Linda, Joe, Lo. I'd had my 5th baby in a house that didn't have, you had to go on the road and haul water back up in cream cans, and it was fun. And didn't have paper diapers either. But anyway, we survived. And then we bought a farm on 3 or 4 miles on west of where we lived. It was a school lease. And then we lived there till we moved up here.
Did you tell them I'm allergic to diapers?
Yeah, you was allergic to diapers. They came out with paper diapers about the time she was born. But she's allergic, couldn't even use them. So I'd try to use them on Sunday, or when we went out. That didn't even work. But anyway, we lived on the school lease, and we raised wheat. We raised cotton a time or two down there, didn't we?
Unfortunately.
I hated it. I tried to put cotton out of my mind. But anyway.
Most time just wheat.
Yeah. But mostly wheat. And feed, of course, you'd have to raise some kind of hay for. We've always had cattle, so we have to raise feed for hay. And he's got balers now. And we had balers. We did baling for ourselves and did custom baling back when the kids were little. And then, of course, when Henry got to where he couldn't farm anymore or anything, well, we kind of got out of all that and just turned everything back to grass. And he's broke out a couple fields that try to get plant hay, so we still have cattle. So he broke out some area, tried to get some area for the cattle, some feed then.
When Henry's grandparents died, is that when the farm, this piece of land came into his hands?
Oh no!
When his parents died, is that when this land came into his hands? Did he have siblings?
Dad took over before Grandma died.
Yeah.
Okay.
They'd made arrangements and
your grandpa died, and after he passed away, then your dad took over farming. Grandma still lived here, and one of our daughters moved up here with her. We still lived on the school lease, and one of our daughters moved up here with her for, I don't know, 2 or 3 years, however long, till Grandma. Her daughter then put her in a rest home, and so then after she got in a rest home, well, actually, we moved up here before when Grandma was still alive, because that's when we closed up windows, and she didn't really like that, and so we left it as near like she could. But then I like antiques enough that I wanted to leave, as near like we could. As the windows were getting bad, they were wooden windows, and so I've had all the windows, storm windows or double pane windows. I had all the windows replaced, and it's had 2 new roofs over the last 30 years. And he's redid the porches. Used to be wood porch floor, but we couldn't keep them from rotting, and so he's run cement. The porch is now cement, but it's basically, we've tried to keep it as near like it originally was, as we can. So, and it was his dad, Henry's, wish that it stay in the family, because his granddad had built the house and he had born and raised here, and his folks owned the house and what have you. So this place has been left to him. Not to say that everybody agrees with that decision, but
well, Joe, growing up, did you have chores here on this property? What would you have to do?
Well, actually, not much here.
Not much here?
We farmed the 56 acres north, but Grandpa still had all the cattle. He had quit farming. But then we would, of course, at home, and Dad leased land around different places. And so we had several farms that we put wheat on. And then I was pretty much the farmer. The girls done most of the yard work. I'd gather eggs and stuff when I was little, but whenever I think I probably started plowing when I was probably 6, if I remember right. And
well, he was,
by the time I was 12,
he was the only boy.
All of it,
he had sisters older than him and sisters younger than him.
He's in the middle,
and
basically.
He was kind of in the middle of all of them, and so we
all had our chores to do, and the girls had different things that they had to tend to, and so we all worked.
And it was hard for me to basically do anything because my seizures got in the way of everything.
Everybody had chores. That just goes that way on farm.
Do you remember the first tractor you got to drive?
As a 720 John Deere, I couldn't pull the clutch back. Dad would get it going. And if I had any trouble, I knew how to kill it, but I couldn't pull the clutch back. And Dad would get it going, and then he'd jump off, and I'd stay out there until.
You scare me to death. I'd look out there and be plowing, and you barely see his little hand when he'd wave as he went around the door. Hardly see his head. Fenders were big, and he's sitting down here. And I used to stand there in the backyard and just hope and pray that I could see him when he come around again, that it wasn't just a tractor. But he managed.
Yep, there was times Dad let me do the driving and he threw cubes out, though.
Well, he never let you drive a tractor.
No, but I was talking about pickup
part.
That's what I was talking about.
Well, Joe didn't mind driving a pickup.
I didn't mind driving a tractor.
But
5 sisters. Tractor beats that anytime.
He'd rather be out there anyway.
Where would you go to school?
Geronimo. Yeah, we all went to Geronimo.
Was that a one-room school, or?
Oh, no. Geronimo's been, there was, I think, 9 Well, there actually might have been 11 that was supposed to have graduated my senior year, but I think 9 of us actually did. Yeah, so it wasn't real big.
See, elementary went from kindergarten to 6th grade, then graduated, and then 7th to 12th grade is how high school went.
Yeah, we didn't have to walk. We rode a bus.
The school bus.
Yeah, I did too.
Yeah.
I did too.
Yeah.
Mine was like that.
He graduated from Cameron, though, ag, and he was employed at Cameron for, I don't know, 3 or 4 years, something.
6.
But they griped every time he went out field to do anything.
They wanted him inside office.
Tanya, he's supposed to be the head department, and he's supposed to stay in there behind the desk, and he just couldn't do that. So he went into business on his own, and he'd been playing in the dirt and tearing up stuff ever since.
Pretty much.
Well, what were holidays like? Would holiday celebrations take place here or someplace else? Holidays.
Oh yeah, back when we was kids, it'd be at our house, or maybe the grandma's up here, or Binky's on occasion. But yeah, there'd be some big ones. Still are.
Yeah. We used to offer farm vacation for kids back when we lived down on the school lease, and we always had a yard full of kids on weekends and summertime. So they had plenty to do, but they had time for a little orneriness too.
Yeah.
You would never get into any mischief, I'm sure.
Well, we had a game bird farm. We had lots of game birds, different kinds, I don't forget, 100 or something different kinds of birds and animals and what have you. And I hatched eggs, the kids would gather the eggs, and I had this huge machine that hatched eggs, and we furnished Fort Sill with quail and stuff to release. We had several hundred thousands of quail, and we'd hatch them and sell them to Fort Sill, bought them to release on the reservation. And so when I'd clean the incubator out, I'd have, buckets of old rotten eggs or eggs that didn't hatch. And these guys that get on their motorcycles or little scooters or whatever they had that and
You better get yourself up or something.
they would have a lot of fun. And I've taken the hose and let me wash them out in the yard more than once. They was, he's always been a good worker. He still is, but there's been a few times that they had a little recreation. So anyway.
Well, how has what's gone on here on the farm changed through the years? Did it change much once you moved back? Once you moved here?
No, I don't know. Not as dependent on the farm. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
It's a lot of attitude changing.
More of a hobby. You don't come out here to, make a living.
Yeah, you're not making a living anymore on the
No.
farm?
Oh, you can't make a living farming.
But it's still here. It still got critters to tend to.
Yeah, different ones ask me how come I've stayed out here. Town ain't got nothing for me. I mean, I may have a drive-by shooter go by and shoot me out here, but at least I got a little elbow room in between times. So Lawton's got where they just, I can't read the paper. Every day there's somebody got a little aggravated at somebody and just decided to blast them. And these school and business shootings are getting terrible.
So what's going on the farm today? Are you running cattle, or are you just...
Yeah, we still got some wheat,
Yeah.
but mostly cattle.
Yeah.
Before Dad when he give up farming, and I was busy, wasn't helping hardly any. He put everything to grass, so he could still tend to his cattle and not have to ride a tractor and be suppressed. And so, but we still got a little bit of wheat, but mostly just grass.
And do you have the original 160 or?
Well, Mom's got this place. It's 160 here, 160 across the road, 110 or whatever on 45th and baseline, and then the 55 acres down at the creek.
So you got a lot to keep up with.
Nah, not that much.
Well, that down at the creek, we used to have. In fact, I went down there this morning.
It looks like a tornado down there.
What shape my camp barn was in. When we used to offer camp for special needs for several years. We'd be able to. It's better than camping out in the yard, but it's not the Hilton. But anyway, we'd have all the campers. More than I had trouble getting anybody to help with it, and so it was mainly me and a couple of volunteers that would. But you could get all the campers you could possibly handle, not just from Lawton, but of course Comanche County has over 2,500 special needs people. So there's all kind of, that's just Comanche County. And then when you go into Duncan, we had them come from OOHRP even, because Oklahoma doesn't offer a lot for our special needs. They don't offer a lot for young folks, recreation kind of things. They're getting better, but skating, back when I was a kid, about the only thing was a movie or skating. And actually, there's not a whole lot more than that for young folks now that has any kind of supervision. It's out there, but then do you want your kid to hang out there? That's, so that part of our times I don't feel like has changed as much as it maybe should.
Have you done any conservation efforts on the farm, terracing, conservation type things, terracing the land?
Is that layout?
Yeah, no, we were responsible for keeping up. I don't remember actually doing the terrace, building them probably before I was 6 or 7.
Oh, that was down on the school.
But we would have to maintain them and take the moldboard and plow them up and be sure not to knock them down and keep maintenance on them. And that was always a big deal.
Your dad, when Grandpa had this, was still alive. He put those terraces, I think they're pretty well worked down back here.
How do you help do that, Mom?
Well, he had a moldboard that you pull it up, make it direct the water to keep it from washing your land away and washing gullies and what have you. Yeah.
Do you have any ponds on this property?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, one there, one back there, and then I have one.
There's 3. That
right there.
What Mom was talking about earlier. I guess my great grandpa, maybe my grandma Renschen, remembered when she was a little girl sitting out watching my great grandpa dig that pond, and it took him all summer, and I could not believe how deep and how big how much dirt that he had dug, because this last summer, the drought, I was out there with my track hoe and 2 dump trucks, and after about the first week, I was in here griping how much mud there was in that pond, and
I seen how much
I was getting sick of that. And Mom reminded me, how would you like to do that with a team of horses and a little old skid? But all I've done was dig out what my great grandpa had dug with that team I didn't go any deeper or any bigger. As soon as I hit what had silted in, you could tell the difference. And I could not believe how much.
You see all those piles of dirt out there. It came out of that pond.
So anyway, she didn't feel sorry for me on the big track hauling 2 dump trucks. There wasn't no sympathy there.
Hey, I used to run a bulldozer. You don't get much sympathy.
No, they dug that with that. Now, Dad had a bulldozer dig this back with the other 2.
Yeah.
But that original pond right here by the
this
house.
This one here was just with one of those little slips. That little bucket wasn't maybe 4 foot. No, it wasn't this wide.
Yeah.
And team of horses, in and out, in and out.
You mentioned the drought this past year. Did that really affect what y'all are doing out here?
It saved me from having to plow a bunch. I told it. I mean, it's a hobby for this farming now for me. No, I mean, so but it was a terrible hot, dry, yeah. But no, instead of plowing, I was digging out ponds. So yeah. But yeah, there certainly was no hay.
Yeah.
Example, I leased 70 acres of alfalfa. The year before last, I got 6 cuttings of hay. 1 cutting, I got 169 round bales. Just 1 cutting. This past year, I got 2 cuttings of hay. The first one, I got 28 bales of hay, and the next one, I got 18. So, yeah. That didn't make
Ask you how it looks for this year's
equipment.
cutting. We're praying for rain tomorrow night. They're saying a good rain Saturday night.
Yeah.
And
hopefully it won't do this again.
They called all week. We've had rain. We ain't had no rain.
But Mother Nature usually changes it by the time they say something, though.
Yeah.
It
it
is so dry. It's just pitiful. I don't know.
But there was droughts back in the Dust Bowl days too, so it wasn't. This is not the only year that.
Oh, I'm sure that that your family's seen changes.
Yeah.
In 30s and drought and depression.
Grasshoppers.
Oh, yeah.
I remember grasshoppers so bad on the fence posts that you couldn't see the post for the grasshoppers. That followed shade around that post all summer. You know, in the morning they was on the west side, and on the evening they'd been. But that post would be yellow with those old yellow-bellied grasshoppers. You remember that?
No.
Did you have a problem with rabbits, jackrabbits back then?
Some. Now, I remember them having, when I was a kid, I remember Dad and neighbors having what they called rabbit drives.
Yeah.
And the rabbits were real bad back, but this was early 40s, late 30s, early 40s. Yeah. But I do remember Dad complaining about rabbits just eating up everything.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Would they work on any WPA projects?
We didn't have any
bridges. Some of these bridges.
Are you talking about the family?
Yeah, the family.
While during the Depression or during.
Did they work for the WPA?
No, we still had. Or I say we. They still had milk cows and tended to the farm.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know, Uncle John or some of them older boys.
Some of those older boys might have.
Yeah. Because
they were laborers most of the time.
Yeah.
They never did own.
That'd be my grandma's brothers.
Yeah,
maybe.
Grandma's 2 older brothers might. Now, Herman was a brother, lived right across over here. He farmed all the time. But then John, he just was a laborer of some kind. I'm not real sure. John wasn't a real heavy worker. I'm not real sure. Just he was a real nice guy.
No, the WPA wasn't.
But he always seemed to be free, footloose, and.
Do you have a family cemetery where everybody goes?
No.
Is where are your husband's grandparents?
Grandparents?
They're all buried up here at Highland.
Okay.
Even Elman? Grandma and Grandpa Elman?
Mhm.
Great. I'm
Yeah.
been to their cemetery.
Yeah, way off there at the side, that old part, you can, if you drive through it, you can tell the old part of the cemetery. It's, but they're all buried out there. There is a cemetery just 2 miles west up the road here that the Vines and some of the
neighbors are buried.
yeah,
in,
it's kind of a
none
family
of us were.
cemetery, Allendale Cemetery they call it, but it there's a couple of the families from around here that a lot of their relatives are buried there, but all of ours, as far as I know, and I think his folks is the only Renschens. I don't know of any other Renschens any closer than Illinois, and there are still several relatives in Illinois that we have been up to visit, but I don't know of any around here that any closer than there. Yeah.
How have your neighbors changed through the years? Your neighbors.
A lot more of them. Yeah. They, about like me, they got a job in town, and yeah, now some of the George Phillips, and there's some full-time farmers around, but most of them have a supplement of some type to pay. Yeah. And even George is retired fireman, so he's not dependent on the crop entirely, not like it used to be.
Kennedy's one of them that's a farmer down here too.
But yeah.
Well, looking at the next 100 years, what do you hope happens to this particular piece of property? What do you hope happens here? Looking into the future.
Just like it is now. Maybe a little more improvement, or be sure it at least maintains what we've got now. And yeah. There won't be any neighbors on this place as long as I'm in control. There may be some across the road or somewhere, but there won't be no houses built on this place. And
No, that was one of his dad's and his grandma's wish, that it stay in the family. He has three sons.
Yeah.
One is married, 2 young boys. One's not even out of high school yet, his youngest son.
Yeah.
And the other one graduated last year. And then Heath lives up the road here.
A little bit on my
He's
side.
married and has 3 little children, 2 twin girls and a little boy. And so there's other Renschens around that if he wants to leave it to some of them, well, that's up to him. But his dad sure wanted to stay in the family, because he had gotten it from his folks, and they had got it from grandma, great-grandma, and grandpa, and all that's ever lived here is them. I mean,
Want to have a Renschen history is what they're doing.
his grandpa built the house, and they ain't never been nobody but Renschens live in it. So
Yeah, that's what Renschen history means. What she called it.
anyway, he would like to, and I'm doing my darndest to see that he gets it. And
And I'm behind both of them. So
it's going to be up to him then to see if he can hang on to it. And I think he can. I mean, I know he will. But of course, you never know what time only tells what goes on.
Well, we've been in some other parts of Lawton where you could see the developments starting to creep up on farmland. And we haven't drove around too much around here, but I don't know how far they are from here. So
we don't have any big major developments around too, but there's houses keep everywhere. Yeah.
For the most part, farmers are pretty good to kind of keep an eye out for things and I've got neighbors that live right across over there that if they don't see me in the yard, you know, they'll pull in just, if nothing else, just pull in and come in to just make sure I'm still in here, you
They
know.
even call you too.
Yeah, sometimes they call and hadn't seen you in the yard for a day or two. You've been sick, and here a while back I had pneumonia. Was in the hospital for
Double pneumonia, especially.
almost 2 weeks. It was 13 days, and this one neighbor came the next day, and he said, "Well, I'm sure glad to see you. I've been over there, and you wasn't home, and I tried to call. I guess he'd stopped up here at Heath, and he wasn't nobody home there, and." He said he couldn't figure out what was wrong with you. Where you
Because I
was
went
at.
with Heath every night when Mom was in the hospital. That's why they,
Some of my neighbors they're real good to stop in.
That's good.
I appreciate that too.
Well, you seem to be doing pretty well for your age, considering.
because Heath, me,
Well,
and
if you
Joe
didn't
and all of
notice,
us
I
were
had a
together.
wet head when you got here because I just got out of the shower because I'd been up feeding the cow that had bad delivery,
Yeah, we had 12 half of
and
them.
then went and checked on another field that's supposed to get sprayed for weeds, and boy, it sure doesn't need it.
I know.
Yeah, but
And I just got back in time to run. I said, "Oh my gosh, look at that! It's after 12 o'clock," and I just got back in time to run in the bathroom and take a shower.
and she had seen a tornado situation at her creek house.
I told Tanya, I said, if they come, just have them come on in and have. She said, "What'll I do?" I said, "Just tell them to sit down. I'll be right out."
I didn't know. That's why I asked.
Well, it's good that you stay so busy, I think.
And I stayed with her all the time to keep an eye on her, like she keeps an eye on me.
Yeah, there's not much money made in farming, but if you don't require a lot, it's a pretty good life. And when we married, he had rented a farm, and it had this little old house on it, and he had a crippled Jersey heifer cow. That was what we had when we got married. And a well down the road where you could go get good water. And it was good water. I wish our water out of the faucet was as good a water as that was. That was real soft well water, spring water. Hey, and it tastes real good. It was, you had to go down there with your cream cans and draw it out of a well, but it was water. And let's hope we don't ever have to always do that again. But better yet, let's hope that our well water doesn't get contaminated some way to where we don't even have well water. Our lakes, as far as I'm concerned about our lakes and things, when they can blow up a building just by flying a plane, they can contaminate a whole lake just by flying a plane.
Well, we covered probably just a little snapshot of life here on the farm. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we close out today? Anything else that you want to tell us?
Farm life's good. Like I showed you this is the year I was born,
Yeah.
and that's prices of your commodities. Back 80 years ago.
Time has changed.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we really appreciate you sitting down with us, and we thank you for your time today.